ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। Bodhasara. Section 16, subsection 28 and verse number 5. This is a rereading of the stories of Krishna and Rama, which we read in a particular way. Usually, we have a particular kind of a reading because it says, oh, Krishna did this, Rama did this, etc., etc. But here, the point of this look into stories of Rama and Krishna is to look at these stories again from the standpoint of a sage. An enlightened sage, somebody who no longer is subject to sorrow, fear, pain, anger, and all these things. The one who has conquered this, what we call samsara, the samsaric ways of being. How will they look at these classic texts? Because these texts have many, many, many layers of understanding and interpretation. And the first layer being just the obvious, whatever it says. And whatever it says is just, we start off as telling stories bedtime stories to children. And then later, as one grows up, more and more layers one can understand, depending on where one is in terms of one's own emotional growth, maturity, etc. And so here, the um, the stories of Krishna, we saw how the last thing we saw was the saving from the delusion, the serpent or the python of delusion. The python of delusion was so huge in the story is that it was not called the python of delusion. The sage now who is reading it is calling it the python of delusion. Earlier it was just called a huge python whose name was Agha, means all wrong things. He was all wrong. He was a demon who turned into a python, the story goes. And his jaw was so big, his mouth was so big that his lower jaw rested on the earth and his upper jaw was lost in the clouds. That big a maw, the mouth. And then his whole mouth resembled a very interesting and a curious cave where you could go with a little flashlight and explore. Oh, how nice! But remember, this is now being reread as the cave of delusion. And so, when you enter the cave of delusion, what happens? You get lost in this cavernous place. And so, of course, this being a python of delusion was swallowing up all the devotees and who were just there, who were cowherds and who suddenly said, oh, where did this cave come from? Let's go check. And so, as they checked, they could check in, but they could not check out. This was the situation. They were all inside the stomach of this huge python. And Krishna went in. The story is, and then of course became so big. He went in his normal size, and then he assumed a huge size because of his siddhis. Siddhis means certain kinds of spiritual powers. And because of the siddhis, he went inside and then became so big that the python just choked and died. And python represents delusion. And this is how the rereading has happened. We saw this verse last time when I was mm, long ago, I think, when I was in Eugene. Since then, we have not had this class. So, when I was in Eugene last month, there we saw this part. And then now we have one more verse left here in the Krishna section before we go into the Ramayana and look at that story. So, here let us see verse number 5. Uh, समूर्तिमानहङ्कारः कंसो नाम महाबलः स्वयमुत्पत्य कृष्णेन धृत्वा सौ विनिपातितः. Now this is the story of Kamsa. The reason why Krishna took birth. The story, it is in this story. Why was Krishna born? Krishna was born to kill this tyrant. And this Kamsa was none other than his uncle. So the uncle usurped the kingdom, became a tyrant and a terrorist, and was terrorizing the entire population. This was the story. And there was a prophecy. The prophecy was the prophecy was like this. The prophecy was that if this Kamsa will not change his ways, then he will be killed by his own nephew. He had only one sister, Devaki, and he loved her very much. Who comes? The baddie also is capable of love, yes, and he loved his sister a lot. And the easiest thing to do would have been to order the death of the sister. But he couldn't handle it because he really loved the sister, and the sister was married and to Vasudeva, and then he could not kill both of them, and he could not kill Vasudeva because he loved the sister too much. And here they were very happy together. Why should I kill them? So then he had an idea. He imprisoned them together in a jail, and then each time they conceived and had a child, he would take the child and kill the child, because the prophecy was the son of Devaki, the eighth child of Devaki, is going to be your nemesis. There was a prophecy. And so he kept killing the children. And I have always wondered, and I still do not know the answer. Okay, he didn't want to kill his sister and her husband and the brother in law. Why didn't he imprison them separately? Then they would not have children, and then he would not have to kill the children. Simple way of doing this. But then there are certain conventions. You don't separate a married couple. There is a kind of a convention like that. In fact, you don't even walk in between a married couple. There is a convention. You don't walk in between a guru and shishya talking, the student and the disciple and the teacher, and you don't walk in between a married couple, and you don't walk in between a mother and a child, because these are certain very primordial and important bonds, and so therefore the connections, and so you don't disrupt that. So maybe perhaps he was going by that convention, but he had to pay heavily for it, because he had on his hands the blood of 7 children, who all of whom he systematically offed as soon as they were born. And then actually 6 of them. The seventh one was a girl, and then as he was holding her legs and wanting to throw her and bash her head, she slipped and flew away, apparently. And her name was Mahamaya. In a way, she was just and she affirmed the prophecy. And she said, okay, just like I have slipped out of your hands, so will the eighth one. And then when the eighth child was born, this was none other than Krishna. The eighth child was born, and then I think that he was blue. Maybe he had some kind of a heart problem. We don't know. That's why he didn't cry. He was all blue, did not cry, and then that made Devaki's resolve all the more strong, because the parents then thought that since he's not crying, the birth is not advertised, and so we can just ship him away somewhere. And then, since it was in keeping with the universal law, suddenly the guards fell into a stupor guarding the prison. And the father of Krishna could easily reach through the bars of the cage into their pockets, get the key, and then take the baby in a little basket covered with some leaves, cross, and it started to rain. It had been raining terribly heavily. It is in the middle of the monsoons that Krishna was born, sometime in that August month. And so he took the baby and crossed the Yamuna, which was in spate. But the Yamuna river also parted, and he went to, from Mathura, he went to a place called Vrindavan, and there he put the baby with this Yashoda and Nanda, a cowherd couple. And then they had a child. It was very interesting. They had a child that was stillborn, and he brought that and then put it here in order to fool Kamsa. And that's how Krishna was saved. And then later on, of course, as Krishna grew up, he became Kamsa's nemesis. I mean, everything was tried. All kind of peaceful ways were tried to make him give up this kind of a life and relinquish this tyranny and stop being a terrorist. But of course, you cannot negotiate with a terrorist. That is what is the definition of the terrorist: one who kills first and then talks. And so this one, of course, then Kamsa was killed. Now this is the literal story. Now what do we hear? How do we understand this? And we understand Kamsa as Ahankara, the ego. And what is this ego? The one that will put an end to everything that is threatening its existence. That is the definition of the ego. It will put an end to all the things that even there is even a semblance of a threat to one's existence. It will put an end. And so, therefore, this ego has to be conquered. I do not think it's about decimation of this ego, because the decimation means what? I mean, the thing is, you do need the ego. The ego means I notion. And if the I notion is not there, who is the one that's picking up the book and studying? Who is the one that's eating? Who is the one that's drinking? Who is the one that says, oh, I suffer from self ignorance and I want to be enlightened? Who is the one that says? And who is the one that says, now I know the truth of myself. Samsara in the form of sorrow and fear can never get me. Who is the one that says? Without the I notion, there is no study possible. There is no activity, daily activity also possible. So it is not about the ego being killed off. Because if the ego is killed off, one might as well be in a vegetative state, because there is no person there possible, and the person here is in the form of the ego. So we cannot say the ego is decimated, but the ego is, through the teachings, lightened of the burden of thinking that it is the agent of all actions, and it is lightened of the burden of identifying itself as done in by other people's omissions and commissions. This is the effort of the Upanishads and of texts like the Bodhasara, that the ahankara is lightened. Lightened means what? It's, if not enlightened, quote unquote, it is at least lightened of the burden of thinking itself as some kind of an agent of action. Why shouldn't I think of myself as an agent of action? Because that status of that wrong identification is fraught with guilt and hurt, guilt, regret. Because if I take upon myself the status of actor, action, etc., then I will always feel like I haven't done my best. And why did I not do this? Why couldn't I have done this? Like this, there is a whole host of regrets, total regrets, and so many problems are there. Oh, but if I just say I am not doing this, does that mean I am not a doer? I mean, that could be that I'm in a state of delusion. I'm just in a state of delusion. I'm not doing anything. I can just, anybody can tell themselves, oh, I didn't do it. You could be in denial. That's not the idea. So it is not a denial. Relieving oneself of the burden of thinking that one is an actor is not a place of denial. In fact, it's an objective place. Why? Because the negation is a partial negation. What do we mean by a partial negation? The negation is a partial negation because there is, the doer is who is the doer? Doer is, of course, me, and everything is me. So the doer is also me, but I is not the doer. I am not the doer. Doing is happening, and yes, I am doing things, but I am not attaching myself to the identification that I am the doer. The status of the doer is an as though superimposition upon that I which is free of all doership. This is what one has to understand. And the status of being the recipient of other people's doings, other people's omissions and commissions, a bhokta, which means the experiencer, the status of experiencer of other people's doings, is also not something that is intrinsic to the I. The I is free of being the recipient of other people's doings. So the recipient is me, but I am not the recipient. And so this is what one has to do. So this is what one has to know. I am not the recipient of other people's doings. And then, so who, if supposing somebody insults, A insults B, so then how should B take it? B should say, oh, I'm not being insulted. Exactly. Why? Because the I is free from all insults. Exactly. And the I is free of being the target of anybody's destruction. It is indestructible, it is ever constant, as we are studying in the Bhagavad Gita. Nityaha, Sarvagataha, it is all pervasive, ever constant, and indestructible. So it cannot be destroyed, it is free of being insulted, it is free of everything that is connected to any kind of a status of being the recipient. So then the recipient status is an as though superimposition upon this I that is free of being recipient. It's just like, somebody is what should I say? Like somebody somebody is in the military. So when you go to report, when you're deployed, you have to wear the uniform. You have to wear the uniform and you have to carry certain weapons, and you have a certain, there are certain decorums and there are certain rules. You have to follow the rules. You have to carry this, and you have to wear these kinds of things. Then after you come home, you are no longer that because you have other roles. One may be a mother, one may be a father, one may be a sister, brother, son, daughter, so many things. A friend, or just a being without that particular role. So the soldier is me, but I am not the soldier. I'm not just the soldier. Soldier is, of course, it is a role that is being handled by and inhabited by me. It is just like that. Same way with in India we have all these traffic police, traffic cops just for traffic violations. So that person has a particular dress, and then that person carries a whistle and keeps on going fee fee all the time whenever people are violating the red light. People, are not, they're not trying to violate the red light, but they're in a hurry to get somewhere, and the red light comes in the way. What to do? This is the small inconvenience. And so the cop will be there, and then what they will do is they will they have a little whistle attached to the lapel, the shoulder lapel, and they with a little band, and they take it out and they keep blowing on it. And then when they blow on it, you, as a motorist, you have to stop, and then they come and then give you a fine. They take your license and then give you a fine, etc. This is what it is. On the spot, they are fined. People, the motorists are fined. This is their job. Now, let's say the traffic cop goes home after the day of work, and this is in fact a true story. This happened to Pujya Swamiji, and once Pujya Swamiji was invited by the family, by the traffic cop and his family for dinner. And so when he went, just the wife was there to greet him, and she said that the children were there, and the wife was there to greet him, and she said he's not home yet, he will be home. Then suddenly everybody was on alert because they heard a whistle outside, and then the jeep came to drop the official vehicle, the jeep. One jeep came to drop off the cop to his house. And then he dropped off, and then the children looked at each other, and the mother said, "Father is coming, father is coming," and they immediately disappeared. They went to their rooms and locked themselves up. Only thing that was there that remained was the family dog, which was, loving unconditionally and wagging its tail. And so the cop came and he greeted Swamiji all right and everything. And then he was sitting there and talking, and the children did not come out. The wife also just repaired to the kitchen, and it became kind of like a funeral. It was all so quiet and everything. And then he said, "What happened to your wife and children?" And he said, "Well, I run a tight ship, Swamiji. I run a very, very tight ship. Nobody can, they're all having routines, and they all have to study. All the time the children must be studying. And then we have to do this. Otherwise, they will just not study, and they will not do well in life if they don't study well. And so, as soon as I come, I blow the whistle, and then I blow the whistle. I'll show you like this, fee, and then this is why my household runs very well, and my children are toppers in their schools and colleges." And so Swamiji said, for actually, as soon as he came in, Swamiji said, "I have time, I will wait. Why don't you change out of your uniform?" He said, "No, no, no, I like wearing the uniform all the time. I love my uniform, and I just am going to wear it all the time." So Swamiji let that go. And then again, this is what he said. And then again, there were three sharp whistles. He announced dinner time with three sharp whistles. And the children that had been playing and were very easily talking to Swamiji earlier, it's almost like a different set of children came down. Three of them. They came down to the dining room, very, very quiet, subdued, and frankly afraid. And then Pujya Swamiji gave a Vedanta class right then and there, and he said that right now, here, the children do not need a traffic cop. They need their father. They need their father. They are wanting their father. They don't want some kind of a cop to be blowing when when the dinner is ready, and blowing when the dinner is done, and all these things. They don't want to be living in a home which is converted into a police academy. They are children. They want to laugh. They want to play. And the relief was palpable. The wife was just, joining her hands in a namaste and going like this, thank you, thank you, thank you. And the children looked visibly relieved. But the most surprising thing was the traffic cop. He was so relieved. He was mopping the sweat off the brow. He said, thank you. I have just been under so much duress and I've been taking all this too seriously. And I used to be a fun loving person. I was a poet. I used to write poetry. I used to sing songs. I don't know what has happened to me. And the first thing he did was get up from the dining table and go change into his regular clothes. And then it was a very, very different dinner. So you see, this is what to learn. So cop, the status of the cop is him, of course. Cop is he, but he is not the cop all the time. He cannot be the cop all the time. That is taking on something that really does not belong to you. And so that you, which is described in the Upanishads as free of sorrow, free of entanglement, free of dysfunctionality, free of being in dysfunctional, codependent relationships, this I is therefore not the compulsive doer. Neither the doer nor the done in you are. This is how the I must be understood. This is what is called the lightening of the ego, of the burden that it is not carrying anything. It is just here. And if it is subject to pain and sorrow, it has to be taught with the help of the teacher, with the help of the text. It has to be taught that it has nothing to worry about, and that its nature is to be Satchidananda, that it is one with the source of all existence, and it is all knowledge, and it never comes to an end. That is what it has to identify with. That is its real home. And the other things, doer, eater, drinker, engineer, doctor, all these things are roles that are as though superimposed upon this I, which is free of all things. So this is exactly what the the ego is represented. The kamsa is represented as the ego. So murtiman ahankaraha. Murtiman ahankaraha means the embodiment of ego. Ego personified is this Kamsa, the character in the story of Lord Krishna, the one who is a terrorist and a tyrant. So, Samurtiman Ahankaraha Kamsaha Nama Mahabalaha. Mahabalaha means of great strength. Why is the ego very strong? Because it does not go. Yeah. It does not go. That's why it holds on to the roles. It holds on to wrong notions. It holds on to wrong identities. It has a penchant for being small. It's an anomaly. It has a penchant for being small and then embracing smallness, and then it cries that it wants to be big and it wants to be all. It's a very confused entity, this ahankara, this ego. And so then why does it hold on to the small? Because it confuses the small for the all. It doesn't know that it is everything and it is indeed all. And not knowing this is a costly mistake because it just clutches on to everything that is small, 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 small. And because of this, it suffers. Because of this, it cries. Because of this, it then wants to become big. This is the problem. And so therefore the Kamsa, this character is ego personified. And it is very strong because it simply, absolutely does not let go. Swayam utpatya Krishnena. Then the question is, who created this ego? Who created this ego? And then the answer to everything is Bhagavan, Ishvara. See, where did this body come from? Where did this mind come from? Where did the senses come from? Same place the ego also came from. It is given, it is created, it is part of the creation. When it goes awry, we need a Krishna. And that Krishna here becomes the inner guru, the inner teacher, so to speak, in the form of one's own conscience, in the form of one's own a guide that keeps the ego in check from becoming a demon, from becoming a demonesque entity that is riding roughshod over the principles of righteous living, ethical life, and then other people's desires and rights and privileges, and then wanting its own way and getting what it wants. This is what is called the asuric ego. Asuric ego means the ego which is in the form of an asura. Asura means a demon. So when does this ego turn quote unquote demonic? It turns demonic because it is in the place of it is in the form of a something that needs to be that has gone awry, something that needs to be managed and brought back. And so therefore it is Ishvara Srishti. Ego is the creation of Ishvara. Just like the body mind sense complex, the ego is also a creation of Ishvara, and it is very useful, because how else are you going to manage this body mind complex? So you, somebody has to say, okay, I have sensations of pleasure and pain. Okay, this is causing me pain. I have to get away from this. Somebody has to decide that, and that is the ego. That is the ego which basically is there, which is the master of the mind, the buddhi, the senses, etc. The one who reclaims all of them as me, 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 me. Somebody has to do that. Otherwise, it'll be a disjointed body mind complex. One will be making decisions and then not really owning up and following through. The ego helps with all that. So it is useful. But just like everything else, if it goes rogue, then it has to be brought back to its place. It has to be put in place. So the one who created the ego is Krishna, and the one who's going to put it in place, back in place, is also Krishna. And the ego is represented by Kamsa. So Krishnena Swayam Utpatya Dhritva. Dhritva means sustained by Krishna. Vinipatitaha, also destroyed by Krishna. And again, when you say destroyed by Krishna, it's not the ego that is destroyed, it is the demonic ego, or the ego that has gone rogue, that is, as it were, destroyed, so that the I notion is freed of the identification with everything that is wrong. So the I notion is freed of wrong identifications, and then it is ready to embrace the all. Because if you want to embrace yourself as all, you have to let go of the small. Oh, but I don't want to let go of the small. Well, what if I were to say the small is included in all? Even if you write the word small, the all is there. Yeah, the word all is there. So small is included in all. How can it not be? If you say I want all, is the small included or not? Yes, it is included. So this is the teaching of the Bhagavatam, which talks about the story of Lord Krishna. It is all about destroying the I as an entity that is separate from everything else, because this separation causes anxiety, causes a sense of alienation and disconnection. And so through this story, to one is told to check the ego, which is very beautiful, because if somebody were to tell, you know what, your ego is out of bounds and you need to check it, then the ego becomes very strong. And then whoever tells that person is given a dressing down. This is what happens. The ego is not ready to listen. But then, if we have a personage in the form of Kamsa, in the form of Ravana, which we are about to talk about now, in the form of Kamsa, Ravana, etc., it's very easy to relate. Oh, we are not talking about me, we are talking about that bad villain over there, Duryodhana. Kamsa. Ravana, those are the bad people. And I'm not like that. But then you can just see, you can sort of, even without relating, the message goes through. The message goes through, and then you can understand how that once in a while one can say, yes, I can see that the inner Kamsa is coming out. And I can see that I can see that I want to crush all the competition. So maybe this is the inner Kamsa. I can see that I'm not being compassionate, but I am giving way to cruel tendencies. I can see that. So then one can slowly assimilate that, because one is not directly targeted. It is very difficult to directly target the ego, because it becomes extremely defensive and offensive. It becomes a ninja ego. It's always trying to protect itself. And so, therefore, these indirect ways become a very effective way of continuing to drop wrong identification at every step, and walk gracefully on the path of spiritual growth. And so that is the story of the Krishna. And now we come to a very nice section. Atha Ramayana Shravana Nirnayaha. How to listen to the story of the Ramayana from the point of view of from the standpoint of the great sages, how to look at Ramayana. Then this is again a very interesting story. So the story of Rama is very interesting. He was born after many prayers. In fact, the parents, the father was a great king, Dasharatha, and he married. He had 3 wives because he could not have a child, and that was his greatest sorrow. And despite marrying 3 times, he was not able to have children. And then a big, what is that, yajna? A big yajna means a fire ritual, a homa was organized. And when the homa was organized, there was a rice pudding dessert that manifested itself, and that had to be shared between the wives of the Sharatha, the queens. And then all the queens had it, and then there was one more portion left. And so the one of the queens had an extra portion, and she had twins. And then everybody else gave birth to one child, one son. And the eldest one, the one that was born from the main queen, Kausalya. This was Rama. This was Rama's birth. And they say that Rama was born, he was a manifestation of the Lord in a human body, just like Krishna. So the birth was very much celebrated, and then manifestation of the Lord in a human body, just like Krishna, Jesus, etc. We hear so many other avatars, just like an avatar, and so it was a manifestation of some kind of avatara means like a kind of a descent of that all powerful Ishvara into inhabiting of that Ishvara into a human body, in a human body, and acting, the role of a human being, while at the same time knowing full well his own nature as Satchidananda. So he was born, of course, enlightened, because this is Ishvara, born with full knowledge of himself and of the Vedas and everything. And so this was Rama. Everything went well. The princes were educated nicely by the rishis, and also they were educated in the art of warfare, because they were kings. They were going to be kings, and so they were very well educated. Everything went well until the day of Rama's coronation. Rama's coronation was planned, and Rama was loved by all the people in the kingdom, which is known as Ayodhya. All the people in the kingdom just absolutely were crazy about Prince Rama, and everybody was happy that he was going to be the next king. And then the coronation was planned in a grand manner, only to have a terrible obstruction on the day of the coronation. one of the co-wives of Dasharatha, the stepmother of Lord Rama by the name of Kaikeyi, she just basically had a big meltdown and a freak out. She had a total meltdown and a freak out, and she loved Rama with all her heart too. She treated him like a son, but suddenly she was egged on by her nanny. When she married into the family, she brought her childhood nanny, who was now an elderly woman. And the nanny basically said, "You need to consolidate your power. And if you are not the queen mother," meaning the queen mother status goes to the one whose child is on the throne. So you have to be the queen mom. And if you're not the queen mother, I mean, people will just spit you out and throw away. Dasharatha is old. He's not going to live for very long. He's going to die. Then what's going to happen to you? You have to consolidate your power by making sure that your son is on the throne. Bharata is on the throne, not Rama. She said, "What are you saying? Rama is like my son. He will never throw me out of the palace." "No, no, no, he will. You don't know the world. I know the world, and I have been with you all this time, and you need to listen to me." So, in a moment of confusion, delusion, she listens to him. She listens to the nanny, and then has this huge fit and has to be taken to the anger management room. There is one we hear in every palace. It is made of some kind of a glass so that you can see that they are not hurting themselves. But then they can freak out, they can have a big fit, they can wail, they can cry. And so Dasharatha was very confused. One minute he left her choosing saris and matching jewelry in order to dress up for the coronation. She was asking his opinion. "What shall I wear? Does this go with this?" And then he was just laughing indulgently and said, "You look nice in anything you wear, whatever you want, you just do whatever you want." And then next minute she is screaming and she has torn off her clothes and she's been taken into the anger management room where she is having a total meltdown. And then she reminds Dasharatha that he owes her 2 boons. When did this happen? Long before. It turns out that Kaikeyi is more than what we think. Kaikeyi is a very accomplished lady, was an extremely accomplished lady. She was a charioteer and she was a soldier. She knew how the art of warfare, and she had driven the chariot when Dasharatha was in a particular war with certain demonic beings. The story goes. And then in the middle of this war, the chariot lost the axle. The axle broke. And then if the chariot falls down, that's as good as surrendering. You cannot have that happen. And so what happened was that what she did was she was minding the horses with the right hand, and with the left hand she bent over, and she bent over on one side and then held the axle pieces together with her left hand so that the chariot would still run. And Dasharatha won the war, and he was just so moved by how proficient she was and how she did not let the battle, let him lose the war. And so he offered her 2 boons. "Just ask whatever you want." And she said, "I have everything. What should I ask?" So therefore she said, "I'll take a rain check." And it now she wanted these 2 boons. First is, my son should be should reign on the throne. And then what else? Your son Rama should be banished from Ayodhya for 14 years. Dasharatha was just, he was just very perplexed. He was in shock. He said, "You know what? We can easily make Bharata, your son, the king. We don't have to worry about that. Rama will be the first one to let go of his claim and agree. Kausalya also is not a problem. She will also agree, the mother of Rama." But why this terrible punishment of sending him to what is certain death? Because in those days, nobody survived 14 minutes in the forest, let alone 14 years. It was for the tigers, lions, all these things, hyenas, and pythons, and all these terrible forest animals were there. And it's not like now, you go and deforest the two-thirds of the earth and then build condos everywhere, condos and mansions. That's not what it was like. The whole place was forested. And so, therefore, it is very difficult to come back from it. Why are you sending this child to certain death? It is as good as being killed. Please don't do this. He begs her, he falls at her feet. But she is relentless. She just cannot be convinced at all. And so Rama goes to the forest to keep the vow of Dasharatha, the boon that Dasharatha gave. And then by the time he goes to the forest, they're all grown and married. He's married to Sita. So Sita goes with him, and then he's very close to one of the twins, which belong to the youngest queen, Sumitra's sons, Lakshmana. He's very close to Lakshmana. So Lakshmana says, I am going to go with you as well. I cannot leave you two to go alone. I'm very attached to you, and I'm going as well. So these three set off on the forest, and then we have a whole section in the Ramayana that is dealing with their antics and their adventures in the forest. How they lived, what they did, and how many demons and how many dangers they had to undergo. All these things. Meanwhile, Bharata was disgusted with his mother. Lakshmana is disgusted with Kaikeyi, with his aunt, and then Bharata says, I'm not going to rule the kingdom. So he follows Rama partially into the forest, and then asks him for his slippers. He says, your slippers will sit on the throne. I will just be a proxy, ruler by proxy. You will be still the ruler. So then he puts the Rama's chappals, the slippers, on the throne, and then he just makes the decisions, but then always in reverential prayer to Rama. And then what happens was that in the middle of all this, Sita is abducted by the king of Sri Lanka, who has 10 heads, a very strange creature. His name is Ravana, and Ravana with 10 heads. And how did he get 10 heads? Because too much indecision and too much ego. Each ego is a head, and then 10 heads means that there's an ego overkill going on, metaphorical. And who is this Ravana? Ravana was actually a great devotee of Lord Shiva. Ayyo, what happened? Ego came in place. He grew a few heads. That's what happened. He got ahead of himself, one can say, and then as a result, he just forgot he was a devotee. And when you forget you are a devotee, what happens? You start to think that you are like a dictator. So he became a dictator. He became power hungry, and he wanted world domination. Became very power hungry, and the last encounter with Lord Shiva tricks him a little bit, actually, with the help of Vishnu. Lord Shiva tricks him a little bit. So he prays and sings and stands on one leg. He does tapas. Tapas means austerities. So he performs a lot of austerities in order to get Lord Shiva to come and give him a boon. And Lord Shiva appears, and he is so happy with himself. He doesn't give him one but two boons. He says, oh, two boons, wonderful. And let me get my brother as well. And he gets his very tamasic brother, who is as large as a mountain. His name is Kumbhakarna. And his ears are so big that they are like Kumbha. Kumbha means jars. His ears are like a huge, not even jar. What are they called? Amphora. This ancient Greek huge jar. So his ears are like that. And so the one with jar-like ears, very jarring appearance, I may add, and that is Kumbhakarna. And so he brings his brother also. Hey, Lord Shiva has come. Come, ask for. He says, and this Kumbhakarna is very tamasic. He is just such a, he's just like a jada, inert person sitting there. And like a big mountain, he just sits there all day. He says, no. Well, come and ask for a boon. He says, I don't know what to ask for. He says, ask for Nitya. Nitya means eternity. Ask to live forever. Eternity. Ask for eternity. And he says he forgets, because in the middle of the asking he goes to sleep. And when Lord Shiva comes and says, what can I help you? He says, okay, one boon for him. And ask for eternity. And he forgets. And since he was sleeping, Nitya becomes Nidra. I want sleep. And immediately Lord Shiva says, Tathastu, so be it. And then he just is a snoring mountain right there. And Ravana is very cross with Lord Shiva. Look at what you've done. You know what he meant. Why did you do this? How am I going to get him home if he's sleeping all the time? And how am I going? There is no wheelbarrow so big to take him from here. Look at what you have done, Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, reverse the boon. And the Lord Shiva says, once it has come out of my mouth, I cannot reverse it. But since you are asking, I can amend it a little bit. Let us say 6 months of the year he sleeps and 6 months of the year he is awake. How's that? So there is no choice. He had to, he had to go with that. And then the second boon he asks is for himself. He says, I want that which never gets destroyed. I want your heart, and I want that to be with me all the time. So then I want you to just come with me, and then I want that without the knowledge. I want Ishvara. I want to be Ishvara, but without the knowledge of the self. A kind of a shortcut he wanted. So Lord Shiva, bound by his austerities, gives him a small Shivalinga. It is called Atmalinga. Atmalinga is it? It is me, myself. Here, take it. And he gives one condition: do not put it anywhere. Do not keep it on the floor. It should not be kept on the ground. Where you go to your kingdom in Sri Lanka, there you can do pratishtha. Means there you can have a temple and put it there. But if you put it anywhere, it will take root there, and that place will be very blessed. So do not lay it down. And Ravana says, no problem. And then Shiva goes to Vishnu and says, you know what? Hey, bro, I want a little help. I have just given this world dominating person some kind of a boon. I cannot retrieve it back. What to do? Vishnu is used to this because Shiva does this all the time. Vishnu has to clean up. He has done this before also. And so then Vishnu goes dressed as a small boy, a little brahmachari. And then eggs on Ravana. Aren't you going to take bath in the river? You have to offer the worship to the sun. You have to do your morning daily worship without bath, and how you have to stand waist deep in the river and offer arghya. Aren't you going to do that? Yeah, well, I can't keep this down. This is Lord Shiva incarnate, and I can't keep this down. He says, okay, give it to me. I'll hold it. No, are you sure? You look rather small. What? You are all of 7 or 8 years old. You may just suddenly want to play, and you may just want to leave. He says, no, I'll hold it. Don't give it to me. I'll hold it. Don't worry, I'll hold it. You go bathe. And he has to close his nose and take 3 dips in the river. So he says, are you sure? Don't put the Shivalinga down. He says, I know. Why are you yelling? I know. I can hold it very easily. Don't worry. You go take your dip. So he takes the first dip, comes out. He says, are you holding the linga? Look, here it is. Don't worry. Second dip. And then when he comes out of the second dip, the boy goes, I have to go. Real bad. I have to go. I have to keep it. He says, no, don't keep it. I'll take one more dip and come out. No. It's urgent. I have to go right now. And then when he's on the third dip, He just keeps it on the ground, which is where it takes root. And Ravana is very cross with this boy, but the boy disappears. Boy disappears. And then Ravana tries to yank out the Shivalinga. And then wherever he yanks out, it grows into two little appendages, the little stone Shivalinga. And then they say that it is there even now in the coastal town of Karnataka, in a place called Gokarna, because the Shivalinga looks like it has cow's ears, and it is still there, it is still worshipped. That is what they say. So then, of course, Ravana doesn't get world domination, doesn't get to continue to be a tyrant, and he comes and abducts Sita. And he abducts Sita because he can. That's all. No other reason. There was really no reason to abduct Sita. Absolutely no reason. In fact, he had a wife, Mandodari, who looked exactly like Sita. But then he said, oh, why not have two of them who look exactly alike? Wonderful. Sita had a doppelganger in the form of Mandodari. And he could have just been happy, but he wanted this one also, as though it's like a conquest, a prize. And then he just abducts her. And the whole story of the Ramayana is the retrieval of Sita from the clutches of Rama, and then they come back to Ayodhya, and then with the help of Hanuman, and his Hanuman is called Vanara. Vanara means humanoid. Naro va nava iti shanka. There is some kind of a doubt whether they are human or not. So they are some kind of humanoids. And so then they all go, they vanquish the demon king Ravana, and they bring back Sita, and then finally Rama becomes the king of Ayodhya. This is the story of the Ramayana. So very engaging story and a nice story. And of course, there are lots of small details which I have completely glossed over, just to give you the skeletal tale. But then how the sage looks at it is in the form of all happening with him. It's more of an inner Ramayana. First of all, the word Rama itself is a big clue to getting there. Rama means, the word Rama has a vyutpatti, has a derivation. Ramante yasmin yoginaha. It is derived from the root verb ram, not rum, okay? Yeah, ram, to revel, to revel. And if you argue that even the RUM makes you revel, that's only for a short time, okay? After that, one is sad again, all right? So this is Ram, to revel. So Ramante, in whom the yogis revel. And what is it that one can revel in? One revels in that which is deserving of revelry, which is the happiness. One can only dwell upon that which is happy. Otherwise, you cannot revel in something that is sad. So you revel in something that is happy, and that is the truth of yourself, which the yogis revel in, because it never comes to an end, and that you, which the Upanishads talk about, is always happy, always free of guilt, always free of hurt, always free of pain. And so that is Rama. And so that Rama, the personage of Rama, Lord Rama, what does it symbolize? It symbolizes what all of us want to be, what everyone wants to know. That's why everybody in Ayodhya, the kingdom, everybody wanted a piece of Ram. Everybody wanted to be close to him, because actually they did not know that he was really the truth of all of them. They just had to understand this through the study of Vedanta. They did not know that. So they were actually very attached to and wanting to clutch on to him. And then that is the personage of Ram. And Sita, who was abducted, means Shanti, peace, happiness. That is Sita. Sita means peace and happiness, and it is said that she was the adopted daughter of Janaka, another childless king, and she was found while they plowed the ground. Somebody had the temerity to bury a baby girl alive in a chest under the ground. Fortunately, she was still alive, and then she was adopted by the king. And so the happiness and the shanti is a latent possibility. That is what it is. It is always a latent possibility. Sometimes difficult. It is suppressed by other cruel mechanisms inside oneself. It is suppressed by the exigencies of time and place and anxiety and everything. And then, but it is very much there. Sita is very much there, and it is she is the truth of oneself. One can never be separated from Sita. If one is separated from Sita, chaos ensues. This is what the whole story of the Ramayana is, getting back Sita. So, where did she go? She went in the clutches of the ego, Ravana. She went in the clutches of the ego symbolized by Ravana, and she had to be repatriated to the truth, as the truth of the self. And so that is the story. More we'll see next week also we will meet for this class, and also Mundaka Upanishad, so we will see that. Okay, we'll continue with that. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you very much. It is a
Namaste.
nice to have
Thank
a
you.
change of. Thank you. It's nice to have a change of pace from that marathon, moksha marathon, which is going on at relentless speed. That other the 2 classes per day. So it's kind of nice to just relax and teach. It is wonderful. Take care. All the best.